The Atlantic Slave Trade, Part 5. Some mitigating factors. We are often reminded of the depopulation which accompanied the slave trade. Although in the interior it led to the depopulation of towns and villages, in the south it sometimes gave rise to towns which grew out of slave trading centers. In certain areas of the forest zone, it helped to relieve them of their surplus population. Towns and islands like Elmina, Cape Coast, Axim, Fernando Po, and Sao Tome, as well as city-states of the Niger Delta like Boni, Brass, and Calabari, owe their growth at least in part to the slave trade. It was also to some extent responsible for the expansion of Oyo, Benin, Dahomey, and Asante among the West African states and empires of which we are proud today. The slave trade led to the spread of the African population to other parts of the world. Like the Jews of the dispersion, wherever these Africans went, they carried with them their African culture. For instance, among the West Indians and American Negroes of today, we still find the secret society or cult of Igbo and another one called Voodoo, both of which originated in West Africa. These people have also developed rich musical and dance traditions, based to a very great extent on their African heritage, but including Western elements, which have profoundly influenced the whole of American and European culture. When after the abolition of the slave trade, thousands of freed slaves returned, they brought back to West Africa the knowledge they had acquired as a result of their contact with the outside world. Among these returning freed slaves were numbered some of Africa's greatest pioneer evangelists, educators, and nationalists, and the part they, together with the Negroes of America and the West Indies, played in Africa's political awakening cannot be overemphasized. Even the firearms which Europeans sold to the coastal peoples in return for slaves had different effects. Although they made extensive slave raiding possible, at the same time, they strengthened the position of the Africans militarily. Because Africans owned firearms, they were able not only to expand their empires, but also to resist European incursions into the interior and thus prevent them from interfering in local politics. African rulers were thereby enabled to remain on their thrones and in control of their territories. In the middle of the 19th century, however, this situation was reversed because in order to abolish the slave trade, Europeans now began to arrive along our coast in heavily equipped gunboats, instead of their former trading ships, while at the same time denying the sale of firearms to the Africans. Europeans were then able to interfere with African states on a large scale. Finally, like the trade with North Africa, that with Europe and America had a certain civilizing influence on the peoples of the Guinea coast. The influence Europeans left on the coastal peoples cannot be exaggerated. It is true many of the Europeans who came were not the type to influence anybody for good. Nevertheless, their total cultural influence was great, especially on the Gold Coast, now Ghana, and in parts of the Niger Delta. African kings and merchants copied European ways of life by learning their languages and trading methods, by dressing like them, or by imitating their architecture. In the days before schools were established in West Africa, their children were sent overseas to bring back to their peoples the secrets of the white man. Viewed in this way, it can be said that the trade brought comfort to peoples of West Africa. There is a story recorded by the Oxford historians, Dr. C.W. Newberry, about a merchant named Lathe from Grigi in Togo, who in 1785 was living in Dahomey. He could speak English, Portuguese, and Danish, and had two sons abroad, one in England and the other Portugal. There were others like Lathe, and their achievement was part of Africa's gain from the slave trade.